The sky above the planet was dark and full of stars when a small human ship came flying through space. It was damaged, its lights flickering, smoke rising from its side. Inside, alarms were beeping loudly, and the crew tried to stay calm. Luke was sitting in the corner of the control room holding his arm. He had been hurt when the ship shook hard a few minutes ago. Blood was coming out, but there was no time to treat it now. "We're losing power," someone shouted. "Can we make it back to Earth?" another voice asked. "No," said the pilot. "We have to land somewhere, fast." The captain looked at the screen. There was a moon nearby. It was cold, gray, and covered in dust, but it had gravity and a thin atmosphere. It wasn't much, but it was their only chance. "Set course for that moon," the captain ordered. Everyone held on as the ship dove toward the surface. The engines groaned and fire trailed behind them. The ground came closer and closer. Then came a loud crash. Silence. After a few seconds, Luke opened his eyes. Everything hurt. The lights were off. Smoke filled the air. He could hear people coughing, moaning. They were alive. Barely. He stood up slowly, his legs shaking. He walked through the broken hallway and saw bodies on the floor. Some didn't move. Others were trying to get up. "Anyone else awake?" he called out. A few voices answered. Not many. Outside, the wind howled across the rocky surface. The moon was silent and empty, with no signs of life. It was far from any known colony or station. Help wouldn't come quickly, if it came at all. Back on the ship, Luke tried to fix a radio. His hands were bleeding, and his vision kept going blurry. He hit the side of the machine, hoping it would work. Nothing. He sat down and took a deep breath. He thought about his home, his friends, his family, and things he might never see again. Then suddenly, the ground began to shake. A bright light filled the sky. Something was landing nearby. Everyone who could still move gathered near the exit. They watched as a large, sleek ship touched down just a short distance away. It was unlike anything they had ever seen. Smooth, silver, and glowing with strange symbols. The door opened. A tall figure stepped out. It was not human. Its skin was dark blue, almost black. Its eyes were large and white. It wore armor that looked like it was made of liquid metal. It moved with purpose, scanning the area with a device in its hand. The survivors stared in fear. "What do we do?" someone whispered. "Stay calm," said the captain. The alien walked forward and stopped a few meters away. It looked at each of them carefully. Then it spoke, but not in any language they knew. None of them understood what it said. Luke stepped forward, even though his legs felt weak. He raised his hands slowly to show he meant no harm. The alien looked at him longer than the others. Then it pointed at Luke and said something else. Still no understanding. But then, the alien pulled out a small device and placed it on its chest. After a moment, it spoke again. "Are you injured?" Everyone gasped. Luke blinked. "Yes," he said quietly. "I am." The alien nodded. It reached into a pouch and pulled out a small, glowing tool. It scanned Luke's body, making soft, beeping sounds. "You are badly hurt," it said in slow, broken English. "You need treatment." "Can you help us?" Luke asked. The alien looked around at the others, then back at Luke. "Only one can come," it said. There was silence. The captain stepped forward. "Take him," he said. "He has the best chance." Luke didn't argue. He was too tired. He looked at his friends, gave them a weak smile, and followed the alien toward the ship. As the door closed behind him, he wondered if he'd ever see Earth again, or if he had just stepped into something far more dangerous than the crash. Luke woke up slowly. His head felt heavy. The light around him was soft and blue. He tried to sit up but groaned in pain. His arm still hurt, but it was wrapped in a strange, glowing bandage. He looked around. The room was smooth and curved, like the inside of a shell. There were no visible wires or buttons. Everything looked clean and quiet. The walls shimmered slightly as if they were alive. He tried to remember what happened. The crash, the moon, the alien landing nearby, then being taken aboard this ship. The door opened with a quiet hiss. The tall, dark-skinned alien stepped inside. Luke remembered seeing him before and the one who saved him. "You are awake," the alien said in slow, careful English. Luke nodded. "Where am I?" "On my ship," the alien replied. "You needed care." Luke looked at his arm again. "Thank you." The alien studied him for a moment. Then he turned and walked toward a panel on the wall. He touched it and a screen lit up. Symbols flashed across it, glowing softly. "What's your name?" Luke asked. The alien looked back at him. After a pause, he answered, "Kale. I'm Luke," he said, pointing to himself. Kale gave a small nod. "Yes, I know." They stared at each other for a few seconds. Then Kale walked closer and scanned Luke again with the small device from before. It made a soft beeping sound. "You will heal," Kale said. "But slowly." Luke sat up more. "How long have I been here?" 9 hours, Kale replied. Luke blinked. "That's all." Kale didn't answer right away. Instead, he turned and walked out of the room. The door closed behind him. Left alone, Luke stood up carefully. His legs were weak, but he managed to walk. He looked around the room again, trying to understand how things worked. There was no bed, just a smooth surface he had been lying on. No chairs, no tables. Everything was built into the walls. After a while, the door opened again. This time, 2 more aliens entered. They looked like Kale, but their armor was different. One had red markings, the other yellow. They didn't speak. They only watched Luke closely. Kale came in behind them. He said something to them in his own language. They responded quickly, then left. Then Kale turned to Luke. "My crew does not trust you." Luke frowned. "Why did you save me then?" Kale crossed his arms. "Because it was the right thing to do." Luke wasn't sure what to say. He looked down at his feet. "Well, thank you." Again. Kyle walked over to the wall panel and pressed a few symbols. A small tray slid out from the wall. On it was a container filled with thick green liquid. "Drink," Kale said, handing it to Luke. Luke sniffed it. It smelled earthy, like moss and rain. He took a small sip. It tasted bitter, but not bad. Kale watched him carefully. "This will help your body heal," he explained. Luke drank more. "So, what now?" Kale didn't answer right away. He looked at Luke again, then finally said, "You will stay here until you are well. Then we will decide what to do with you." Luke swallowed hard. "Decide?" Kale nodded. "You are not supposed to be here." Luke looked around the strange room again. He knew that already. But hearing it out loud made it feel more real. He was on an alien ship, in space, with no idea what would happen next, and the only person, or being, who seemed to care about him was the one who had saved his life. Kale.4. Now that would have to be enough. Luke stayed on the ship for several days. At first, he didn't leave the small room. Kale brought him food and medicine each day, checking his wounds and making sure he was healing. Slowly, Luke's strength returned. Each time they met, they tried to talk more. Sometimes it was hard. Language was still a problem, but they found ways to understand each other. Gestures, sounds, drawings on paper that Kale allowed Luke to use. One day, Kale asked, "You study rocks?" Luke blinked. Then he realized Kale was asking about what he did before the crash. "Yes," Luke said, smiling a little. "I study Earth, like this." He pointed to the floor. Kale tilted his head. "Why?" Luke thought. "Because I want to know where we come from, how the world works." Kale looked impressed. He tapped his own chest. "I study stars, paths, dangers." Luke nodded. "We both study things, just different ones." They smiled at each other. It was small, but real. After a few more days, Kale let Luke walk around the ship under watch. Everything looked strange and smooth. No buttons or levers, just glowing panels and moving lights. The floor felt warm underfoot. Other crew members watched Luke with cold eyes. Some stood far away. Others whispered as he passed. "They don't like me being here," Luke said quietly. Kale walked beside him. "Some do not trust change." "What about you?" Luke asked. Kale stopped walking. He looked at Luke for a long moment. "I am learning." That was enough for now. During meals, Kale taught Luke new words. He showed him symbols on screens and told him their meanings. Luke taught Kale human words too, like friend, home, and sky. They laughed sometimes when they got things wrong. Once Kale tried to say thank you and ended up saying, "I thank your nose." Luke couldn't stop laughing. But not all moments were easy. One night, Luke woke up to loud voices outside his room, arguing, angry. He stepped close to the door and listened. He heard a voice say, "This is wrong. He should not be here." Another voice answered, "Kale made the call. We follow orders." Then came silence. Luke sat back on the bed, heart pounding. He knew he was a guest, but maybe not a welcome one. The next morning, Kale arrived later than usual. He looked tired. "Are you okay?" Luke asked. Kale gave a slow nod. "Some question my choice." Luke frowned. "Because you saved me?" Kale looked at him. "Because I care what happens to you." Luke didn't know what to say. He wasn't used to people, or aliens, saying things like that. "Why do you care?" he finally asked. Kale paused. Then he said, "Because I never met someone like you. Someone who tries to understand, even when afraid." Luke smiled shyly. "Well, you're not so scary once you get past the tall, glowing armor." Kale tilted his head. "Glowing," Luke pointed. "Your chest plate. It shines sometimes." Kale looked down and chuckled, a low, deep sound. "It reacts to emotions." "So what does that mean?" Luke asked. Kale looked back at him. "It means I feel calm when I am near you." Luke's smile grew wider. He didn't know what the future held. He was still stuck on an alien ship, surrounded by beings who didn't trust him. But one of them did, and that made all the difference. For now, that was enough. Maybe, just maybe, it could be more. The ship was on a mission when the attack came. It had been traveling through a quiet sector of space, scanning for old wreckage and mapping unknown routes. Most of the crew were going about their usual tasks when alarms suddenly blared across the halls. Red lights flashed. Kyle was in the command room when he saw it. A swarm of small, fast-moving objects appearing on the scanner. They were not friendly. "Rogue drones," one of the officers said. "They must have been waiting." Kale's jaw tightened. These machines were dangerous. They had no pilot, no master, just programming that told them to destroy anything that moved. "Raise shields," Kale ordered. "Prepare weapons." The ship shook as the first drone struck. On the other side of the ship, Luke felt the impact. He was in his small room looking at the symbols Kale had given him to study. Now papers flew into the air as another blast hit. He stumbled but stayed on his feet. He knew something was wrong. He ran out into the hall where crew members were moving fast, shouting orders in their own language. One of them looked at Luke and frowned. "Stay here," he said in broken English. But Luke didn't want to stay. He wanted to help. He ran toward the control room, following the sounds of alarm and movement. When he arrived, he saw Kale standing tall, giving quick commands. Sparks flew from panels as the ship took more hits. Luke stepped forward. "What can I do?" Kale turned, surprised. "You should be safe." "I can help," Luke said. "Tell me what to do." Kale studied him for a moment. Then he pointed to a station nearby. "There. That system is failing. If it goes offline, we lose half our power." Luke nodded and ran to the panel. It was covered in glowing alien symbols, none of which made sense to him. But he remembered watching Kale work. He found the emergency manual override and pulled it down. Nothing happened. He tried again. Still nothing. Then he noticed a red light blinking near the base of the console. He reached under and felt something loose. Wires. He pushed them back into place and hit the panel. A deep hum filled the room. The lights brightened. Power was restored. Kale looked over, eyes wide. "You did it?" Luke smiled, breathless. "Just doing what you showed me." Outside, the battle continued. The crew fought hard, firing lasers and dodging attacks. Slowly, they managed to take out the drones one by one. Finally, the last one exploded in a flash of light. Silence fell over the room. Everyone stood still, catching their breath. Then came applause. Quiet at first, then louder. Even some of the crew who had doubted Luke were clapping. Kale walked over to him. "Thank you," he said. "You saved us." Luke shook his head. "We saved each other." Kale looked at him with new respect. Before, some saw Luke as a problem. Now they saw him as someone who could be trusted, not just a human, a part of the team. After the battle, the crew worked to repair damage. Luke helped where he could, carrying tools and handing them to engineers. He didn't understand everything, but he tried. Later, in a quiet moment, Kale sat beside him. "You are braver than I thought," Kale said. Luke chuckled. "I was scared the whole time." Kale smiled slightly. "So was I." Luke looked at him. "Why did you let me help?" Kale met his gaze. "Because I believe in you." Those words meant more than Luke expected. He looked around the ship, at the faces of those who once watched him with doubt. Now they looked at him like he belonged. Maybe not fully, but maybe, just maybe. He was getting there. After the battle, word spread quickly through the ship. Luke had helped save them. Some still didn't trust him, but others began to see him differently. Kale stood taller when he walked with Luke now. Not out of pride, but because he knew his people were watching, and for the first time they weren't looking at Luke like a mistake. But the peace didn't last long. One day, Kale was called to a high-level meeting with the Alien Council. It was done through a special signal that lit up the command room. The message was clear. Return Luke to Earth immediately. Kale read the order twice. Then he closed his eyes for a moment before turning to Luke. "They want you to go home," he said quietly. Luke frowned. "What? Why?" Kale looked away. "They say, I have kept you too long. That contact must be limited." Luke crossed his arms. "So, that's it? I just leave?" Kale didn't answer right away. He wanted to say no. He wanted to say there was another way, but he was bound by duty, and breaking rules could cost him everything. "We leave soon," Kale finally said. Luke didn't argue. He just nodded, though his heart felt heavy. The next few days were quiet. Luke packed the few things he had. He said goodbye to the crew members who had come to respect him. Some gave small nods, others even offered words of thanks. As the ship neared Earth space, everyone expected a smooth drop-off. But space had other plans. Without warning, a strange pull yanked the ship sideways. Alarms blared again. Lights flickered. The crew shouted as the ship spun wildly. A wormhole. No one saw it coming. Kale tried to regain control, but the force was too strong. The ship was pulled deeper and thrown across space like a leaf in a storm. Then came silence. The ship crashed onto the surface of an unknown planet. Trees broke the fall, but the impact was hard. Smoke rose from the engines. Parts of the hull were torn open. Inside, Kale groaned and opened his eyes. His vision blurred for a moment before focusing. He turned his head and saw Luke beside him, unconscious but breathing. The rest of the crew were hurt, but alive. Systems on the ship were failing. Power was low. Communication was gone. They were stranded. Kale looked out through the broken window. The sky was dark red. Tall rocks jutted from the ground like broken bones. Wind howled through the trees. This place was not friendly. He turned back to Luke, who was starting to wake up. "Where are we?" Luke asked, voice hoarse. Kale looked at the damaged panels around them. "Not where we meant to be." Luke sat up slowly. Can we fix the ship? Cale shook his head. Not yet, we need time, resources. Luke took a deep breath. Then we survive until we can. Cale studied him. Even after being told to leave, Luke wasn't angry. He was ready to help again. They stepped outside. The air was cold, but breathable. The crew worked fast to secure what little supplies they had. Food, water, tools. Night fell quickly. The stars above were unfamiliar. The moon was split in two, floating close together in the sky. Luke sat near a small fire made from broken metal and dry leaves. He looked at Cale. You didn't want me to go, did you? Luke asked. Cale looked into the flames. No. Luke smiled slightly. Then maybe this isn't such a bad thing. Cale glanced at him. Being stuck on a strange world is not bad? Luke shrugged. Not if I'm with you. Cale didn't say anything, but something inside him warmed at those words. They didn't know how long they would be here. They didn't know if help would come. But for now, they had each other. And that was enough. The first few days on the planet were hard. There was no shelter, only what they could build from broken ship parts and the strange trees around them. Food was scarce. Water had to be boiled before drinking. Every hour brought a new challenge. Luke and Cale worked side by side. They gathered supplies while others rested or repaired what little they could. Luke used his knowledge of rocks and soil to find clean water underground. Cale used his tools to purify it. At night, they sat near the fire, tired but alive. One evening, as wind howled through the jagged rocks, Luke looked at Cale and asked, Do you ever get tired of being in charge? Cale thought for a moment. Always. Luke smiled. I used to work alone most of the time. Just me, my notes, and a rock hammer. No one depending on me. Cale nodded. I have always had people watching me, waiting for my orders. If I make a mistake, many suffer. Luke looked into the flames. I lost my family a few years ago. A storm took their house. I wasn't there. I was working on a dig site. Cale watched him closely. You carry that pain still. Luke sighed. It never really goes away. But you learn to live with it. Cale was quiet for a long time. Then he said, My people believe leaders should not show weakness, that we must always be strong. But you're not, Luke said gently. You're just like the rest of us. Human, well, sort of. Cale gave a low chuckle. We feel fear, sadness, loneliness. Luke leaned back. So do I. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind. The next morning, they went out to search for more materials. The ground was icy, and the sky was gray. The air felt heavy. As they walked, a deep growl came from behind the rocks. They stopped. From the shadows stepped a creature unlike anything they had seen. It was tall, covered in thick fur with sharp teeth and glowing eyes. It sniffed the air, then let out a loud roar. Luke slowly backed up. What do we do? Kyle raised his weapon. Stand behind me! The creature charged. Kyle fired a quick burst, hitting its shoulder. The beast howled in pain but didn't stop. Luke grabbed a burning stick from their campfire and waved it wildly. The creature hesitated. Cale aimed again and fired. This time, it fell. They stood over it, breathing hard. That was close, Luke said. Cale nodded. We need better weapons, better shelter. Luke looked around. Then we make them. They worked all day, building stronger walls and traps. Luke found metal scraps to shape into blades. Cale modified old tools into defense systems. As the sun set, they sat once more by the fire. Luke looked at Cale. Thank you for saving me, for staying with me, for being here. Kyle met his gaze. Thank you too, for showing me that strength is not about power. It's about standing together. Luke smiled. Guess we're doing that. They weren't just surviving. Anymore, they were learning. About the world. About each other and maybe about something more. After weeks on the strange planet, Luke and Kale finally managed to fix part of the ship's signal system. It wasn't much, but it was enough to send out a distress call. They waited and waited. Then one night, as the red sky darkened, a light appeared overhead. A ship, help had come. The crew cheered weakly. They were tired, hungry, and worn down, but alive. Kale stood beside Luke as the rescue ship landed nearby. Its door opened, and more of Kale's people stepped out, tall, armored, and serious. They looked at the damaged ship, then at Kale and Luke. One of them stepped forward. He wore a red symbol on his chest, a sign of high rank. "Commander Kale," he said in their language. Kale responded in kind, giving a short bow of respect. The officer turned to Luke and frowned. This was not a friendly look. The rescue team worked quickly. They brought supplies, medical help, and orders. Kale and Luke were taken back to the main fleet. Once aboard, Luke felt small again. The halls were wide, filled with beings who didn't look at him with kindness. Kyle walked beside him, silent but close. In the command chamber, the council sat in, a circle. They were the highest leaders of the alien fleet. Their eyes studied Kale like he had done something wrong. Finally, one of them spoke. "You broke protocol," she said in clear English. "You kept the human longer than allowed. You brought him into danger. Now you have returned, late and without permission." Kyle stood tall. "I did what I believed was right." "Was it worth it?" another council member asked. "Your delay has caused concern among our allies. Your actions have raised questions about your judgment." Luke stayed quiet. He knew this was not his place to speak. Kale took a breath. "If saving lives and doing what is just is a crime, then yes, I am guilty." There was silence. Then the head council member leaned forward. "You will return the human to Earth immediately." Luke's heart dropped. Kale turned to them. "May I visit Earth myself?" The room went still. It was rare for one of their kind to step onto a human world. "Why would you ask such a thing?" the leader asked. Kyle looked at Luke. "Because I want to understand humans better, and because he is important to me." Murmurs spread through the room. Luke didn't know what to say. He looked at Kale, surprised, and touched. After a long pause, the leader gave a slow nod. "You may go, once, under watch. But do not forget your place, Commander." Kale bowed. "Thank you." As they left the chamber, Luke finally found his voice. "You really want to come with me?" Kale nodded. "Yes. I want to see where you come from. I want to learn more about your world. And about you." Luke smiled. "Well, it's not as fancy as this place, but it's home." Kale looked at him. "Then I wish to see it." They were heading back to Earth. But this time, they wouldn't be separated. Kale was coming too. Not as a soldier, not as a stranger, but as someone who had chosen to be by. Luke sighed, even if it meant facing doubt, fear, and questions. He was ready, and so was Luke. When the ship entered Earth's orbit, Kale looked out the window for a long time. Below him was a world unlike any he had seen. Blue, green, filled with life and movement. Luke stood beside him. "That's it," he said. "Home." Kale didn't speak at first. He just kept watching as the planet grew larger. Cities lit up at night. Clouds rolled across oceans. It was beautiful in a quiet way. They landed in a hidden area, far from big cities. The ship touched down softly in a forest, clearing. The air outside was warm and smelled like rain and trees. Luke stepped out first, breathing deeply. "It feels good to be back." Kale followed, his tall frame standing out against the natural world. He looked around carefully, taking everything. The sound of birds, the feel of wind, the way light moved through leaves. Luke led him to a small town nearby. It wasn't much, just a few roads, a market, and some houses. But it was peaceful. His friends were waiting. Two people greeted. Him, Maria, a woman with short hair and quick eyes, and Dan, a man who smiled easily and gave Luke a strong hug. "You're really back," Maria said. Luke grinned. "Yeah, and I brought someone with me." Maria and Dan looked at Cale with surprise, but not fear. They studied his dark skin, his glowing chest armor, his calm stance. Cale bowed slightly. "I am Cale, friend of Luke." Dan raised an eyebrow. "Friend, huh?" Luke laughed. "Long story." They spent the next few days showing Cale around. He watched how people talked, how they worked, how they lived. He saw children playing, farmers growing food, old men sitting together and telling stories. He asked questions about everything. "Why do you smile so much?" he asked one day while walking with Luke. Luke shrugged. "Because we can. Because it makes us feel better." Cale thought about that. On his world, emotions were kept inside. Showing joy or sadness too openly was seen as weakness. But here, people wore their feelings like clothes. He liked it. One evening, they sat by a fire near the beach. The sky was full of stars. "Do you miss your home?" Luke asked. Cale looked up. "Sometimes. But I am learning that home is not only where you are born, it is where you feel connected." Luke smiled. "So maybe this place could be home for you?" Cale turned to him. "If you are here, yes." Luke looked away quickly, heart beating faster than usual. He didn't know what to say. The next morning they visited a school. Kids gathered around Cale, curious and excited. He let them touch his armor, showed them how his tools worked, even taught them a few words in his language. They laughed when they tried to say them. Later, scientists came. They wanted to study the ship, ask questions, learn about alien tech. Government sent messages asking for meetings. But Cale didn't care about politics. He cared about understanding humans and being understood. As the sun set on another day, he walked with Luke along the shore. "Thank you for bringing me here," Kyle said. Luke looked at him. "Thank you for coming." They stood close, watching the waves roll in, and for the first time Cale felt something deep inside him shift, like he belonged, not just on this world, but with Luke. The sky was gray the morning Cale received the message. He sat outside with Luke, watching the sea roll onto the shore. Birds flew overhead, calling to each other. It was peaceful, but not for long. A small light blinked on his wrist device. An incoming call from his people. Cale stood up and answered it. Luke watched as Cale listened, his face slowly losing its calm. He spoke in his own language, voice low and serious. After a few moments, he closed the call and stood still. "What's wrong?" Luke asked. Kyle turned to him. "They want me to return." Luke frowned. "Return? Back to your fleet?" Kyle nodded. "Yes. They say my time here is done." Luke stood up. "But you just got here." Kyle looked at him. "I know." They walked back toward the house where they had been staying. Maria and Dan were already awake, making breakfast. Maria saw their faces and stopped. "What happened?" Luke sighed. "They're taking him back." Dan set the pan down. "So soon?" Cale stepped forward. "My people are not happy with how long I have stayed. They say I have broken rules, that I must return or lose my place among them." Maria crossed her arms. "So what are you going to do?" Cale didn't answer right away. He looked at Luke, then out the window at the sky. "I don't know," he said quietly. Later that day they went for a walk along the beach. The wind was cool, the sand soft underfoot. "You could go back," Luke said. "Just for a while. Talk to them. Tell them you need more time." Cale shook his head. "It is not that simple. If I go back, I may not be allowed to return." Luke looked at him. "Then stay." Cale met his eyes. "If I stay, I lose everything. My rank, my home. My people will see me as lost." Luke swallowed hard. "But you'll have me." Cale took a deep breath. "That is why this choice is so hard." They sat on a log side by side. "Doe, you remember when we first met?" Luke asked. "You saved me because it was the right thing to do." Kale smiled slightly. "I remember. Maybe staying here is the right thing now," Luke said. "Not because of duty, but because of what matters most." Kale was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "I have always followed orders, served my people, lived by their rules." Luke looked at him. "And now?" Kyle turned his gaze to the sea. "Now I see another way, one that does not follow old paths." Luke gave a small smile. "So, what's your answer?" Kyle looked back at him. "My answer is you." Luke blinked. "Really?" Kale nodded. "I will not go back. I will stay here, with you." Luke felt something warm rise in his chest. He wasn't sure what to say. Kale added, "I do not know what life on Earth will bring, but I know that I do not want to live without you." Luke smiled. "Then welcome home." They sat there for a while longer, watching the waves move across the water. Kale had made his choice. He would no longer be just a commander of a distant fleet. He would be a man, a being, who chose love over duty, connection over control, and for the first time he felt truly free. Years passed. The world changed a little because of Kale. At first, people were scared of him. Some still thought he was dangerous, an alien who didn't belong on Earth. But as time went on, they saw the truth. He wasn't here to take anything. He was here to learn, to share, and to live. Luke and Kale built a quiet life together in a small coastal town. Their house stood near the sea, where waves rolled in every morning and stars filled the sky at night. They had no big jobs or loud titles. Just simple days, walks along the beach, meals cooked together, books read by the fire. Kale learned more human words. He even picked up how to cook, though his attempts at pancakes made Luke laugh every time. Luke, in turn, learned more about Kale's people, their history, their ways of thinking, their stories passed down through light and sound. They shared what they knew with others. Scientists came to talk. Teachers asked them to speak at schools. Even government leaders wanted to understand the bond between a human and an alien. But none of that mattered as much as the life they built together. One day, while walking through the forest behind their home, Kale stopped and looked at Luke. "Do you ever miss space?" Luke asked. Kale thought for a moment. "Sometimes. I miss the stars, the feeling of flying between them." Luke smiled. "But?" Kale looked around, at the trees, the birds, the sunlight filtering through the leaves. "I found something better," he said. Luke raised an eyebrow. "Better than space?" Kale nodded. "Yes, I found home." Luke felt his heart warm. He reached out and took Kale's hand. They kept walking side by side. Later that evening, they sat outside watching the sunset. A small group of kids ran past, chasing each other and laughing. One of them, a boy named Tommy, stopped and waved. "Hi, Mr. Kale." Kale gave a small wave back. "Hello, Tommy." Tommy pointed at the sky. "Are there aliens out there?" Kale looked up. "Many. Will they come here too?" Kale smiled. "Maybe, if they are lucky." The boy grinned and ran off to join his friends. Luke chuckled. "You're kind of a local legend now." Kale tilted his head. "Legend?" Luke nodded. "Yeah. The alien who chose to stay, the one who showed us we can be more than what we think." Kale looked at him. "It was not just me. It was us." Luke leaned closer. "Together." Kale rested his head against Luke's. "Always." The wind blew gently, carrying the smell of salt and pine. In the sky above, stars began to appear. Some of them were from places Kale once called home. But now, home was right here, with Luke. And nothing, not duty, not fear, not distance, could change that. They had started with a crash, a rescue, and a question. Who is this human? Who is this alien? Now, the answer was clear. They were friends. They were family. And they had built something rare, something Unbreakable, a lifelong connection, across stars, across worlds, and across hearts.